for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. You have this kind of really interesting background. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the company to start with?
Absolutely. So I started Poly.ai 8 years ago as a spin-out from the University of Cambridge, where I met my co-founders. I did my PhD. And we were fortunate in that we worked on deep learning when it was very, very young, unpopular. It didn't really work yet. Then it started working a little, then a bit more and a bit more. And that's really been the journey of both my time in academia and then at Poly.ai for the last 8 years. Our previous company got acquired by Apple to make Siri more conversational. That's a daunting task because Siri has this first mover disadvantage where it's used by a lot of people, mostly hated by those people. And I kind of got fed up with people just telling me, oh, Siri sucks. And I was like, okay, sure. And my whole spiel was like, well, why does it suck? Do you use Siri?
Reluctantly.
What do you use it for?
Mostly checking accuracy of things like time zones, things like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. That's the first. But yeah, mostly. Timers, like alarms, very simple things.
Things that you could use a mobile for.
100%. It's mostly a gimmick. It's not something you need in your life.
Yeah.
And I felt that even if we got it to be way better, and if you look at like ChatGPT voice mode now, it's incredibly impressive. It puts to shame everything that many of the others like Siri, Alexa, Google did for a long time. It's still not used very actively.
But this is such a good point. I mean, gimmick, right? We've had so many eras of tech over the last particularly 10, 15 years where people jumped on board and thinking this is going to be the next big thing. And then there was a wane and nothing really happened, or, the interface had to change before it got traction. For you, what really convinced you that AI and agentic AI in voice was going to be the thing? Was there like a defining moment or something that made you go, yeah, this is...
Well, look, we started as technologists that really wanted to make it work.
Yeah.
So we chose the problem, not a technical problem, not like a commercial problem that needed fixing. Now, as we started Poly, and we worked with Samsung, we worked with car companies on in-car assistance.
Totally. Cars is such a common one, yeah.
And then, we did a bunch of other, we worked with an augmented reality company. That's another thing that's been perpetually coming, but not really getting there.
A bit like blockchain.
Well, that at least made some people very wealthy, right? But I don't know anything about blockchain. Yeah. But it really kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, if we're going to build this and deploy it in a place where it makes a difference, where do we have to go? And the answer is very simple. It's customer service. 2% of Britain works in contact centers. 2% of America works in contact centers. At least as many people offshore support the UK and the US in contact centers, and there's perpetually a lack of agents to pick. You're always waiting on the line. People are always new in those jobs. They stay for 4 months on average. They're never well trained enough. It's a job that, there are a lot of them, but they're very transient. And very few people actually stay in those careers for a very, very long time. But so there was a problem that needed fixing. If you could build AI that is good enough to handle, let's say, half of those phone calls, you'd make every company a better version of itself. So to me, it was like, okay, well, straight line thinking, let's go and work on that. So we became a B2B company, right? And today we work with large enterprises. Think of a FedEx, or PG&E is the largest utility company in America. They work with us, or Metro Bank, NatWest, Unicredit, a lot of big regulated industries, a lot of healthcare companies, a lot of retail companies, a lot of hospitality, like Gordon Ramsay restaurants work with us. He's our brand face. Yeah. Then Caesars, half of the Las Vegas Strip works with Poly.ai. So many a use case where, and we focus on hospitality first because we really wanted to change the way that people feel about voice AI, because for the most part, when you call one of the, best case, it's neutral. You need to make an appointment. On average, it's a negative thing, like your internet's not working, you overcharge for electricity, you have a power outage. At that point, you are already starting from a negative baseline. And then if you encounter a self-service labyrinth designed to keep you away, well, your day got worse. Yeah. So people are unwilling to engage. And my whole spiel and the company spiel has been, let's get to systems that are good enough to handle a lot of the conversations and help companies just be a better version of themselves for their customers.
Yeah, I even remember back in Australia, we had problems with a lot of the earlier services, particularly in banking, which were your kind of triage of if you want something, press 1, but
Yeah.
it was actually changed by voice. Instead of pressing a button, you had to say things.
Yeah.
But they weren't turned on an Australian accent. So
100%.
you would basically be shouting at the phone, and the joke was, do you put on an American accent or a British accent?
Yeah.
Because it just wouldn't pick up my accent, for example, which is...
I mean, British accents don't work
Yeah.
nearly as well as they
Interesting.
should either, given that the language originates here.
Yeah.
And I think like to most researchers, Australian, it's like another 4 or 5 British dialects, right?
Totally.
And then like you look at like South Africa, and God forbid, like non-native speakers like me, where it gets even worse. So like it's the first generation of that tech was like very America first. Like many things in America. And it's, they never really caught up. To this day, it hasn't really caught up to cover.
But let's bring it back. I mean, you said earlier you started this as a company to solve a technical problem. I mean, why has it been so hard to automate voice until now? What's been the sticking point?
Everything.
Yeah.
I think that by its very nature, it's a very real-time channel.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to like have models that work really fast, which again limits how much compute you can throw at it. The audio problem by itself is really, really interesting and really complicated because we all sound different. So it's a signal processing thing that, different dialects, different volumes of voice, different tones, especially across different languages, it gets, different things matter. Like if you're doing Cantonese and you need to figure out 9 tones, which people mostly disambiguate based on context, right? Because you kind of know where a word happens.
Yeah.
Like the language is very, very like heterogeneous, and there's an infinite number of ways that people can say something. So getting it to work really, really well, where it just like correctly transcribes what you said, that's still unsolved. It's better than it's ever been. That's been true every year. It's now at a point where you can do relatively complicated things quite well, but there's still quite a performance gap where you need to capture a VIN number, a British postcode, anything like that.
Yeah.
Where, mostly people try once, it doesn't work, they repeat themselves, it doesn't work, and they opt out. Next time they call, it's like, get me a human right now, and they're unwilling to engage. So changing people's perceptions, getting a critical mass of these automated things to be good enough that people expect that they might work, that's the hard bit, because you need to rewire their behavior, not just build technology that works.
Yeah. It's funny, when I was a journalist in the 2010s, early 2010s, I was working for a Silicon Valley publication where my beat was IoT.
Yep.
And none of the transcribers could pick it up. They would say coyote.
Yeah,
That was the closest you get.
Yep.
And it got to the point that I contacted them and said, look, can you please do something? This is one that was designed by a university. I'm using this hundreds of times a day.
Yeah.
And they did. They fixed it.
Yeah, I mean, like back then, you just had to add like a vocabulary item,
Yeah,
and then you know
completely.
that weird string of characters is something you should expect. Right?
Yeah, but it's interesting, like you've kind of gone from very a science background into entrepreneurship. What's been the hardest challenges in doing that for you?
I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that helps.
Honestly, I mean, I'm Serbian. I
Yeah.
grew up in Belgrade where, Yugoslavia was falling apart around us. And, the default path that, your parents had for you was, hey, and this is true in all of Eastern Europe, not just in Serbia, but hey, do maths, do more maths, engineering disciplines, STEM, and, you'll do okay in life because it's quite like independent of the social circumstance and the country where you're located in. So I was always pushed towards that stuff, and I was good at it. But, I can't stop talking. I love talking. I'm an extrovert. So if you then have to transition from being a researcher to speaking with customers, discovering their problems, working on deploying it, it's actually really fun to be a technical CEO because you can kind of like regress into product, tech, etc. Not regress, just move into it temporarily, get a feel of that, move back towards sales, partnerships, marketing. You get to learn new things. So it's not been hard. It's just been a lot, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a good way to look at it. And like when I think of something like voice solutions, you're often dealing, particularly with a deployment like yours, where you may have started with things like hospitality, to some of those more high-risk scenarios like health sciences, regulated industries. Can you give me some examples of how you deal with the responsibility of that?
It's really hard, right?
Yeah.
Because how you build a culture of a company, I didn't really, when I started, I didn't know what these words meant. Culture, brand, values. I thought it was all like corporate hogwash. It is, but it's not. right?
Ask any
Because-
journalist, they'll tell you how many startups ask if you could possibly write their value statement.
Yeah, well, look, I mean,
People don't know this stuff.
I tend to find that as people move from like early stage, especially technical co-founders like me, to later, there's just a moment where people flip from non-believers into very hardcore believers, because it's what people do when you're not looking.
Yeah.
And kind of like
Isn't it?
well, values, right? So what's interesting is if you start with hospitality, then you have a lot of like leverage around like what you can try out compared to say financial services, where we're huge now, or healthcare, which is number one. Like we're well over half regulated industries now. Now, where I think we got lucky, not deliberately, is that we decided that we're going to change the way that the top brands feel about this tech. So if you're working with Gordon Ramsay, if you've seen a single episode of anything that man's produced, you would know that he suffers no fools or bad customer service, right? So even though he's not compelled by a regulator to have a great experience, he's compelled by being Gordon Ramsay.
Reputation, right?
Caesars, for example, swore that they would never have an automated voice system. So it was just, okay, like, you know, I like changing people's minds, and we did. And once we got them, we got all Vegas. So it's the fact that we were always that like premium product that just promises to work meant that a lot of those standards were there to begin with. And then, you know, believe it or not, this like InfoSec standards of a Vegas are comparable to a bank, just because if anything really goes wrong, there's a lot at stake.
True that.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, I didn't plan for that. I was lucky that that was the case, so we had to build that muscle in time. I think there's also a part where I wouldn't really flaunt it as a European advantage, but there's an over-obsession with regulatory affairs, especially in Brussels. Britain has always been like the moderating influence there, but it's no joke here compared to America either. And I think like, you know, we got this far, so there's probably a survivorship bias there, but like there's a very Machiavellian attitude in the Bay Area that we don't really have here. Like we work just as hard, but like we don't cut corners nearly as much. I think that may be behind like why, you know, we produce fewer huge outcomes. But if you make it as far as we did, it means that you've probably built a house with the right foundations, and then you're ready for like regulated industries and all that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more quiet achievers here who are doing spectacularly well in their own industries, who aren't shouting about it like you see in the US when you go there. They don't have a billboard or something like that from the airport.
Yeah, yeah.
Real shift. Yeah. I mean,
And we do a lot of that too. So.
you learn to do it. I think you have to do it for yourself sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I can't get away from in this space. I mean, when we talk about the SaaSpocalypse, I'm sorry, I can't say that word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we alluded a little bit to the hype cycle of that yesterday. You know, these big companies that were in their heyday, disruptors themselves, are now being threatened by companies like yours that are taking on a lot of those essential roles that, you know, help them do their businesses. How do you look at it? Like, how do you look at the shift?
I mean, look, I'm a startup CEO. I'm not a public markets analyst, but
True that.
I think that a lot of those companies are being treated somewhat unfairly, right? Where the market then just, you know, everyone's being a strategist and looking at how it's going to play out, and the perception determines the reality of their share price. A lot of them are foundational, like our infrastructure for businesses. If you look at like a Salesforce or many systems of record, like they're not really going anywhere. The real question is, will they capture the value of the labor and all the other things now being done by AI agents on top of their systems? I think, you know, many of those companies are not weak when it comes to being protectionist, imposing tariffs, costs to others to give their first-party systems an advantage. And, you know, it's slowly happening. We'll see. I think there will be many others emerging on top of them. Depending on the specific market dynamics, they may or may not be able to use their current position to buy part of that future into themselves. I think it's a bit exaggerated. But again, I'm not really commenting on valuation. I don't think a Salesforce is going to disappear. No. On the other hand, like CCaaS companies, these are like contact center companies. Like contact centers are not going away. They'll just be a lot smaller. But they'll be doing way more than they did 2 years ago. And what we're seeing from them as competitors is that they don't have the agility or the willpower to transform at nearly the pace needed to compete with the likes of us. So I don't think they have much of a future, but again, it's mission critical infrastructure.
But
it will exist.
It's a good point. I mean, what you're seeing, what percentage of existing customer support setups are becoming redundant? Like, are people's jobs being eliminated, or are they evolving to something different?
Mostly evolving. So I think what you see in an average contact center, and these are like loose numbers, but
yeah, of course.
There's probably about 20% of the people that are really like a core like employees of that company. They matter, much like top 20% of any department matter. And I don't even mean just by seniority, but their tenure is long. They care about the company. They know a lot about the company. They're that context layer, right? And then a lot of the other people join, come and go, 4 months. I've seen contact centers with turnover of well over 100%. I've seen 200%, which means that like the average person stays for like 4 months.
4 months?
Yeah.
Imagine the onboarding for 4 months.
Well, this is why a lot of SaaS companies in the space are like, we're going to build you assistive tools. And for the longest of times, I was like, why would we can either automate fully, or like, why would we like give someone like notes on like how to do the most basic form of their job? Well, it's because if you want to reduce the cost to serve in a maximum way, you're going to get a BPO in the Philippines or India and those people are not just on your account. They're not presented to you as if they're like your long-term employees, but they're not. They're just, switching accounts and using whatever's in front of them on the screen to try to answer the question. And then the average handling time is 16 minutes instead of 3 minutes. You're pissed off. They think they saved money, but the call took 5 times longer, so they didn't save money. They might have lost the customer. So these jobs will go away. I think the offshore BPO is not long for this world in the shape that it exists right now. I think onshore contact center jobs are about to get a lot better because those companies that really care about having their own employees with long tenure, where they're going to have to pay them better, and they're going to have to train them, right? Because people talk about a lot of things like agentic sprawl, like the deployment of all this tech in a random, haphazard way. Like a lot of slop is coming out. It's not very good, right?
Absolutely.
So we tend to find that the best people who are curious about the new world are adopting these tools really fast. Just yesterday, like a team was at an offsite in a contact center, and there were 4 people there using Claude Code in our ADK.
Really?
And like that's a level that we intend for the IT teams, for the hardcore developers, right?
So interesting.
No, there's 3-4 people, all like in their like early 20s, who are like using Claude Code and using our system in a way that I thought, we used to build these like, and we still do, we build these like no code, low code things that
totally.
click, 2 clicks, it works, it's simple. And it's always been hard to make these for general use cases. Nope, these kids are like, poof. Yeah, Claude Code.
Tell us about the ADK. I mean, you've kind of gone from this black box that we talk about, the AI black box, to something that's quite transparent.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's a lot of talk in this space about how you capture value. I think the one thing that is true is if you get to the point where we're processing over half of all customer service interactions on the planet, we'll be a huge company. We'll be worth a lot of money. I don't know how much. I don't care about the multiple. I care that we make, that we create genuine impact on the world and improve customer service well. Right? So to me, it's like you should just let people use your technology, and you should make it as good as possible. And then if they use more of it, they'll probably pay more, right? And that's all you can do as a scaled vendor to a lot of people. So we've gone from kind of like these like handheld deployments where we were forward deploying teams, doing everything on behalf of the customer, learning a lot about their business, to now like we still have those teams for large customers. But even in large customers, and definitely for a lot of the long tail of the smaller ones, we now have like pre-baked things where we've done that thing before. Here it is, open up like our platform, tell it in human language what's different about you, what's important, upload your files, connect to your past calls with humans, and it'll rewrite itself. Then call it, and it's going to be pretty good, and it's going to be terrible in some ways. Then go back to it and be like, hey, well, that's wrong. You should be looking at this file. Might ask you a clarifying question. It'll go re-implement itself. You call again. You create test cases. And gradually, you kind of get like contact center people to be software people, right? They're like governing the life cycle of, an almost biological entity that is now like their IVR, right? Or their chatbot on the website. So I think, those jobs tend to be better paid than traditional contact center jobs.
That's a hopeful message, yeah.
No, I mean, I'm like, I remember the moment where my mother had to use a computer for the first time in her job. And, I remember how stressful it was for her as she went through, learning, feeling inadequate and all that. And in the end, she's probably 2 out of 40 people in her job stayed there long term. And she was one of them. And, look, she got a far better job out of it. So I think that we can probably do a better ratio this time around. But it's also true that like 70, 80% of those jobs are not really jobs that people want to be long term. Yeah. You need to be incredibly...
A more gig economy, perhaps, for people doing a more creative pursuit or more intellectual pursuit or something like that.
And I think those will go, and it will no doubt impact some people. But, there will be other things. And again, I think on a societal level, we have to be careful about this. And I think we should be thoughtful. But it'll definitely kill some of those gig economy jobs.
What do you see as the next iteration in voice AI that will be particularly sort of compelling? I mean, is it going to be agentics talking to agentics or something more profound?
We already have that happening at scale. We actually had the first one back in 2020 between Google and us. Jeez. They were both terrible and they failed to exchange information fully correctly. But I think like what you will see over the next few years is more than just the phone. You will see this layer of interactivity with enterprises that will be very multimodal, where, today we have people who are like calling and they're on the website and an agent pops up and takes over their screen with like a 2-factor login and kind of shows them what to click and what to do. Circumventing the need for like a bunch of APIs and for them to like read out 5 things to us or explain where they are and why they're stuck. Like that is such a superior experience. Like the first time I saw it, because like one of our forward deploy teams built it, I was like, what witchcraft is this? Like I'm the CEO of the company. And like more and more of these, there's like a real Cambrian explosion of the ways that this can be done. So we're talking like outbound calls, we're talking, all sorts of things that never really happened before are now just like, oh, okay, like, my ChatGPT outbound called this. And like with OpenClaw now, we're like seeing another whole explosion of things that circumvent existing systems. So I think a lot of those like integration barriers are going down. And they'll sound better and better, they'll become more capable. And I think in about a year or two, we'll just find it normal to talk to an AI version of a company. And in many ways, we'll prefer it if it's implemented well, but there will be a lot of slop. So
I think I'd prefer it to an avatar. I'm going to say.
Creepy, yeah. We've seen that too.
We get pitched a lot of avatars. Some are more comical than I was going to say. But
I've had CIOs of large French banks convincing me that's the future. And I'm like, client's always right, but sometimes we...
Yeah, I find the notion that an avatar of yourself can be the ultimate interface for a new customer kind of odd and a little bit insulting, There's a lack of ingenuity there, perhaps.
Yeah. Having said that, I mean, have you tried cloning yourself fully?
A little bit.
Do you like it?
I do.
Yeah. No. I mean, my clone speaks English with a more Americanized version of my accent. Sounds better. Probably make it look better as well. So
I did train mine with an Australian accent.
Oh.
But unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you so much for a very interesting conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.